What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well over you. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and we now have 2 Dallas Cowboys practices to put together some thoughts, some reactions, some analysis, and really just some opinions on. Today is Thursday, July 28th, 2022. This is today's edition of BTB Live. This is a new thing that we're doing here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. In case you are unaware, every single day, that's every single weekday, obviously, now that football season is in full swing with training camp starting this week for our Cowboys. We'll be live here every single afternoon. Again, that's on weekdays to talk about the latest and greatest in the world of the Dallas Cowboys. And today on Thursday, we have a lot of things to get to, including a Dallas Cowboys practice. Now, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. We're reacting to some very light practices. It's difficult. It's actually impossible to come away with some legitimate, real, undeniable conclusions, but there are still some things that we can learn. That's an exciting thing. Baldo Salazar says, what's up, Baldo? Hope your Thursday is going well. We've almost made it to the weekend. Let's go ahead and let's just kind of get into it. This practice, we have some highlights to get to as well. I think it's very obvious that at this point, and this is really normal and standard across the NFL, not just this year, but every single year, defense generally has the advantage early on. We're starting to see that. We obviously have a lot of expectations for this Dallas Cowboys defense. There's a lot of hype around them. I mean, expectations is actually too shallow of a word. There are legitimate, sort of things riding on them, not regressing to the mean the way historical trends would suggest that they would do so here in 2022. And I think so far we're starting to see that. We haven't really seen any pop from DeMarcus Lawrence, but Micah Parsons continues to look amazing. Anthony Brown, cannot wait to talk about. Trayvon Diggs, everything kind of, the right boxes are being checked, even contextually, and that's an important thing. So let's start here. Let's take a look at Micah Parsons. For the Fort Worth Star-Telegram's Clarence tweeted this out. If this hadn't been a practice, this would not have been a good moment for Dak Prescott.
Yeah, I think Dak is dead.
I don't know why that video didn't take up the whole screen. Sometimes we run into technical difficulties even when we're on live. That's just kind of the way this thing goes. But I said this on Wednesday. It is amazing that Micah is managing to surpass some expectations. And I know it's still early, but Micah is really looking on the right path. Micah's looking like he's doing what defensive superstars do. This is the path that other players of this caliber have taken on this side of the ball, the Aaron Donalds, the TJ Watts of the world. So Micah Parsons looks great. I mentioned Anthony Brown, and I talked about in a recent video here on the channel, please do subscribe here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, by the way, how Anthony Brown is a little bit underrated, how Anthony Brown is a little bit overhated by some Dallas Cowboys fans. I know that he had all the penalties on Thanksgiving Day last year. I know that Trayvon Diggs gets all the headlines. I know that Trayvon Diggs gets all the interceptions. You can make a very strong argument that last year was the best year of Anthony Brown's career, and I know that's silly because whoever you are, you likely feel like Anthony Brown was trash last year. Did you watch Thanksgiving, like I said? But Anthony Brown quietly had one of the better seasons of his career, and I think he is an extremely high-quality point of depth. We haven't seen anything yet, and again, it's still very early, from Kelvin Joseph to really feel great about that. But Anthony Brown, through 2 practices, is starting to look like a very viable point of depth in the secondary for the Dallas Cowboys. It was Anthony Brown who had the first interception of training camp on Wednesday, a pick 6 off of Dak Prescott. And I'm sure there's some people like, well, it's Dak, well, blah, blah, blah. Well, look, Anthony Brown, look, respect him. Please respect Anthony Brown. That's kind of the charge that I'm leading early on here in training camp. Last year, Maurice Kennedy had an interception off of Matthew Stafford in the joint practice that Dallas had with the LA Rams, and everybody kind of lost their minds. Anthony Brown is through 2 very light, very minimal training camp practices, giving us exactly what we want to see. I think he was one of the stars, if you want to, assign winners and losers from practice. I think he was one of the biggest winners from Thursday's session. Now, let's move to the offensive side of the ball. Enough with the Anthony Brown love. I promise I won't overwhelm you with it, but I think you should start respecting Anthony Brown. I hate that he switched his jersey number to number 3. I didn't exactly love 30, but whatever. It's a different argument for a different day. Like I said, we do these shows every day, and sometimes news happens at night. That's just kind of the way, the NFL, the world works. And late Wednesday night, word emerged that the Dallas Cowboys were set to sign a new wide receiver. That officially happened on Thursday. The Dallas Cowboys bringing in KaVontae Turpin, the reigning USFL MVP. I know you watch a lot of USFL football, and KaVontae Turpin, again, the reigning MVP of the New Jersey Generals. In fact, an incredible point brought up by the Dallas Morning News is Michael Gehlken. The Dallas Cowboys have now signed the last 2 USFL MVPs in KaVontae Turpin and Herschel Walker, both playing for the New Jersey Generals, albeit different iterations of them. But KaVontae Turpin joining the Dallas Cowboys roster. What goes up must come down to the NFL. Nick Ralston was waived, the fullback. So Dallas now down a fullback, although obviously this is the modern NFL. You don't necessarily need one, although Mike McCarthy did say on Thursday that, he kind of views that style of football coming back. But that's an argument for a different day. Lord King 83, what's up, says, I'm stoked they signed him. PR nightmare for others. He does have a very troubled past. There's no doubt about it. KaVontae went to TCU. He played his college football there. Connected to some awful stories. Mike McCarthy did address that as well. He said that the team, he didn't use the phrase due diligence, but he effectively said that's what the Cowboys had done. Obviously, we see this in sports. The Cowboys feel like KaVontae Turpin can help them, and so they've brought him in. But there's no denying that he does bring an enormous amount of baggage. As far as the football player that KaVontae Turpin is, he is a wide receiver, so there is that, and we've all been saying, you might be saying to yourself, RJ, you've been getting onto the Cowboys to sign a wide receiver. Here they go. They finally did it. That's true. But I don't know how much he's going to be used on offense. That kind of remains to be seen. And look, he's had one light practice with the team, and it was today. It was Thursday. It was extremely light. We're going to show you a highlight in a minute. But I think the impression seems to be that KaVontae Turpin is going to make this roster. It feels, that the standard kind of player who is signed at this time of year is either a really established veteran of sorts, like Malik Hooker a year ago. We're going to get to that also here today. Or it's a kind of a tryout sort of situation. And so, this is somebody who's never played in the NFL, again, who has a troubled past, and yet it feels very firm that he's going to make this roster from a special team standpoint. The Cowboys do not have a designated returner at the moment. Some would argue that the Cowboys should utilize CeeDee Lamb in that way. Some would argue that the Cowboys should utilize Tony Pollard in that way. We've seen that happen at different times. Tony Pollard obviously returned to kickoff last year in that game against the Raiders on Thanksgiving, and so I'm not a fan of either of those things. I love the idea of having a designated returner, especially somebody who is shifty. So again, as far as the football is concerned, there is a lot to like about the athleticism that KaVontae Turpin brings to the Cowboys. Now, for what it's worth, there is still a bit of a question mark at the wide receiver position. Big Flock 91 says, anybody else noticing Washington's hands? Big Flock, I think you're talking about James Washington. That's what I'm assuming here. And there was an issue with James Washington that kind of arose, and we're going to get to this, right? This is just kind of the part of the gig with training camp. There are things that pop up, things that flare up, injuries and whatnot. James Washington on Wednesday, during Wednesday's practice, going for a catch, going down to the ground, seemingly hurt his hand, walked off with trainers. And Mike McCarthy did address that, said they kind of looked at things, but that there wasn't really anything going on. And it does seem like all is well with James Washington, although I understand if you are kind of holding your breath here. This is a player, this was the first external free agent who the Dallas Cowboys brought in this offseason. And so, consider him important if you want. I have not been high on him. I'm not. I know there are a lot of Cowboys fans who think James Washington's going to come in and going to make all these big plays, and he was being used in the deep, part of the passing game during Wednesday's practice. I need to see that to believe it. I just there's not enough there, and you can argue that he was buried in Pittsburgh, etc. And that's just, if you want to live on that hill, you can have all the real estate as far as I'm concerned. So I'm interested to see, but thankfully it appears that all is all right with James Washington. Washington. The Cowboys receivers are a bit of a question mark. They do now include Kevontae Turpin, but it did feel like CeeDee Lamb had a nice day, at least a nice start on Thursday. But, hey, wide receivers are evolving. All right, so we have a few specific things to touch on when it comes to the Cowboys wide receivers. First of all, very quick highlight, Jalen Tolbert. I think we're all excited. It's nice to see him developing more of a rapport with Dak Prescott. We know they took the trip to Miami together, but still, this warms our hearts. Now, obviously, Michael Gallup not a part of things at the moment. I got an itch on my nose. Not a part of doing this. Doing these. We're new at this live thing. But Michael Gallup not a part of things at the moment. He's on the PUP list, and we've all kind of been wondering for a very long time how long is Michael Gallup going to be out, et cetera, et cetera. Well, Michael Gallup spoke after practice and said it's not a reasonable possibility that he will be ready in week 1. Kevin Myers says just excited to see the competition to receiver. There needs to be a competition because, again, and this isn't breaking news. This isn't a shock. We've all basically, from the moment Michael Gallup was injured against the Arizona Cardinals, kind of expected this to be the case because that's just kind of the timeline for a torn ACL, right? But for Michael Gallup to say that, I think is notable. I think it's important, and I think it's a good thing, actually, to come out right now. We're still in July and say, week 1, because you get rid of that. You get rid of everybody asking you the question over and over and over again, where are you at? Why aren't you practicing it? Why are you still on the PUP list? Whatever the case may be. But we now know that Michael Gallup not playing in week 1. And if you want to be dramatic and you want to extrapolate what he's talking about, if week 1 isn't reasonable, then what becomes reasonable? Are we talking, because there's not a big difference between week 1 and week 2, are we talking about week 4 maybe, or are we talking an extra month? It's worth noting that Benjamin Albright, who covers the NFL, the Denver Broncos specifically out in Colorado, tweeted in the aftermath of this news that the rumor was that week 5 was the target for Michael Gallup. And if you do the math, I guess is maybe the best way to say it, because Michael Gallup is on the PUP list, and we talked about this in Wednesday's show. Players can be removed from the PUP list at any time during training camp, but if they remain on the PUP list to start the regular season, they have to be on it for a minimum of 4 games, and that is a new rule change. It used to be 6 games. That's brand new here in 2022. So if you do the math, right, that Michael Gallup's, first of all, he's placed on the PUP list. Second of all, that new rule change. Third of all, he comes out and says that week 1 is not a reasonable possibility. Fourth of all, that the rumor is week 5. It's not difficult to do the math and say that maybe it is week 5 that Michael Gallup makes his return and he's on the PUP list for the first 4 weeks of the season, et cetera, et cetera. But that does increase the need. Okay, cool, Cowboys. You brought in Kevontae Turpin. You have a return specialist, but you still need help at wide receiver. You need an actual pass catcher in your offense because, yes, CeeDee Lamb is seemingly going to take a step. Jalen Tolbert is a nice option. James Washington is a bit of a question mark right now. Even if you count James Washington, right? And there's no need to overreact right now. We're still very early, and we still have to see a lot of these players. But even if you count James Washington among the things that you're somewhat certain about, that only gives the Cowboys 3 receivers to sort of somewhat count on in CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Tolbert, and Michael Gallup. Let's see here. Big Flock 91 says, I like Tolbert. He snatches the ball versus it coming to him. He's the 50-50 jump ball guy. Very much agreed. Kevin, in fact, agreed. Says, I was just thinking the same thing. Groom him to be number 2, and I bet he doesn't lose his position or playing time. I mean, look, I know that we're all excited about Jalen Tolbert, but when Michael Gallup's back, there's no question who the top 2 receivers on this team are. Red Supremes says we want TJ Vasher. No word out of him yet. No, but again, it's still really early, so hasn't really been an opportunity, I think, to get excited about TJ Vasher. But so if we're talking about things the Cowboys still need, I think it's definitely they need a wide receiver. They need help at linebacker. We're going to get to that in just a little bit here, but they still have CeeDee Lamb, which is a very good thing. Of course, it's worth mentioning that when you include or when you talk pass catching options, you have to include all pass catching options. So maybe Tony Pollard's going to be utilized more. We all would love to see that. Dalton Schultz is obviously a factor. There were a few Dak to Schultz, hookups on Thursday. It's very clear and very obvious that the chemistry is there and is thriving between quarterback and tight end. After practice, Dalton Schultz telling members of the local media, obviously it's been a bit of a stressful few weeks for Dalton Schultz with the franchise tag deadline and things like that. His exact quote here, "I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't disappointed that he didn't reach a long-term deal with the Cowboys." Dalton Schultz is playing on the franchise tag here in 2022, a value just south of $11 million for the season. Big Flock 91 says Noah Brown's got to be on the chopping block. Noah Brown is kind of needed right now. I don't think he's on the chopping block. I think if there's a receiver who's somewhat known, whose future is a little bit in doubt, it's probably Simi Fehoko, not Noah Brown, but that is what it is. So anyway, last highlight to get to, there's not been a lot of chatter about Tyler Smith yet. The biggest kind of news was that Connor McGovern got the first reps at left guard in Wednesday's practice, the first practice. Tyler Smith going up against Tristan Hill. This was a great video shot by Dave Helman of Fox Sports. You can kind of see the early battle that's taken place here. I know nobody really thinks much of Tristan Hill. That's an interesting spot to watch as well, but Tyler Smith clearly learning what it's like to be in the NFL. It's a very different world than Tulsa. Good for Tyler Smith. It's going to take some moments like that. That's just kind of the way it goes in the NFL. But all told, I think so far, 2 practices in, things are kind of where we would want them to be with the Cowboys. Nothing is really unexpected. There's no bad news. The bad things that have happened were all very known and predictable. Really just kind of being headlined by Michael Gallup being on the PUP list. And then today, those are the most negative things to happen to the Cowboys as far as the football is concerned. They haven't added anywhere. They're still kind of getting their footing under them as training camp begins. They're now 2 practices in, and that's really exciting. So we're going to start to see some evolution and some growth and some more things kind of put on their plates. But for now, I think practices have gone rather well, in my estimation. Ryan Doyle says we need to develop the young talent wide receiver. Don't just throw a guy to the practice squad and see him get snatched up by another team, most notably Simi Fehoko. He's 6'4", 220 pounds, runs a 4.4. There's no question that Simi Fehoko is an incredible athlete. Athletically, people scoff at this, but last year when he was coming out of the draft, comped to DK Metcalf. That's literally his athletic profile. Corey Cooper coming in here saying Simi Fehoko was a bad draft pick. I don't think it was a bad pick when we're talking about a 5th round pick, but it hasn't happened. And that's not to say it could never happen, but the fact that it hasn't yet, you've got to make a decision at one point or another. He had some very small opportunities last year. He's got to have a big training camp. He's got to have a big training camp, big preseason. Simi Fehoko does. I think it would be awesome if he did. It'd be awesome if he did start to kind of separate himself and put himself in the conversation for wide receivers the Cowboys can count on. I would love to see the development, the young players down the roster, Simi Fehoko, TJ Vasher. But you could put Jalen Tolbert in that mix. He's a rookie, obviously. That'd be a very nice thing for the 2022 Cowboys. Kevin Meyer says, I believe Tyler Smith will be fine. Definitely an upgrade from Connor's. Talking about Connor Williams and Connor McGovern. I don't know. I'm a little bit higher on Connor Williams than most people tend to be. I know he had the penalties as well. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, and that's not a bad thing, but it's very difficult to come into the NFL day one and be very, very, very good. Only the best of the best tend to do it. I think Tyler Smith has really just done the right things since being drafted by the Cowboys. I saw a friend of Blog on the Boys, John Owning, tweeted about this actually today on Thursday. Ever since the Cowboys drafted Tyler Smith, the stock has only continued to rise, I feel like. But that time just kind of, you have to live it out. Time is necessary. But so training camp practice number 2 in the books, all is well there. Did want to get to one more thing here before we ducked out. Lord King 83, by the way, says you think they should take the safety from Cincinnati. I don't know if you're talking about Jesse Bates, who's also on the franchise tag. There's no way on earth the Cowboys would trade for Jesse Bates. It's just not going to happen. Plus, the Cowboys safety room is kind of legit right now. Not like legit, but I mean, they have veterans we believe in. They have Jalen Kearse, they have Malik Hooker, they have Donovan Wilson, they have Israel Mukwamu, they have Marquise Bell, the undrafted free agent. I mean, they have a lot of options to really experiment with. And that's not saying like, oh, they just have like experimental options. They have proven commodities. So I'll pass on Jesse Bates. Plus, even if we were interested, which reading more of your comments, Lord King 83, it seems like you're not. It's not something the Cowboys would do. But on the subject of that, things the Cowboys would or would not do, the name that has been thrown out the most, Jesse Bates, some people have pontificated about over the offseason, but the name that has been thrown out the most as of late is veteran free agent linebacker Anthony Barr. All right, Michael Gehlken of the Dallas Morning News was on our First and 10 podcast here on the Blogging the Boys podcast network. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Leave a rating, write a review. That makes us happy. He was on one of our Monday shows, First and 10. He brought up Anthony Barr's name in the back and forth discussion that Jon Machota and Bob Sturm had over at The Athletic. They brought up Anthony Barr's name. Anthony Barr's name has come up a lot of different times in a lot of different outlets, obviously being connected to the Dallas Cowboys. This week, early this week, Calvin Watkins of the Dallas Morning News reported that the Cowboys had no plans to sign Anthony Barr. Boo, Cowboys, Catboy, all the stuff. All right, we've heard it, we've seen it, we've said it, we're frustrated, whatever. My contention has been, and a lot of people share this, I'm not trying to sit here and say like, oh, listen to my unique idea on this. The Cowboys have they maybe have the best linebacker in the NFL on their roster in Micah Parsons. Cool. We all agree there, right? Micah isn't really a linebacker. He's a unicorn. He's a lion. He's all sorts of wonderful things. Micah Parsons plays along the edge. He was getting work with the edge rushers today on Thursday. So you cannot, it's weird to say you can't count on Micah Parsons, but you can't lump him in with the rest of your linebackers. And so if you look at your non-Micah Parsons linebackers on the Cowboys, you've got Leighton Vander Esch, who played every game last year, good for him, but he only played 19 games the 2 seasons prior to that. You've got Jabril Cox, who seemingly just escaped being placed on the PUP list himself, and who Mike McCarthy said is going to be on a pitch count, obviously, throughout training camp, at least at the beginning. You've got Luke Gifford. You've got some 2 players who you brought in over the last couple of weeks. You need some depth at linebacker if you're the Dallas Cowboys. So I don't know if you're the Cowboys how you cannot be interested in Anthony Barr. By the way, real quick question. DFW AV Geek 521 says, I am late to this. Is this podcasted or just YouTube? This is a YouTube exclusive show. We do this every single day here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. It only lives here. It only belongs to you, our loyal, perfect YouTube audience, but we obviously have a lot of podcasts on the Blogging the Boys podcast network as well. But anyway, the point of Anthony Barr, to get back to that, is the latest word on Monday was that the Cowboys had no plans to bring in Anthony Barr, but here we are just 3 days later, and that has already changed. According to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, the Cowboys are reportedly not entirely out on Anthony Barr. Here's the article that came out again on Thursday morning. I'm just going to read it to you verbatim, although you can read it yourself because, as noted, this is on YouTube, not a podcast. But anyway, the Dallas Cowboys have been flirting with the idea of signing free agent linebacker Anthony Barr to bolster their depth at the position since May. That means almost 3 months at this point. And although they opened training camp without making a move on Barr, Vice President Stephen Jones said the 4-time Pro Bowler remains a viable option for the Cowboys. He said the team wanted to take a look at second-year linebacker Jabril Cox and other linebackers in training camp before making a final decision on Barr, who has played 8 seasons with the Minnesota Vikings. He also almost went to the New York Jets. That story's been told many different times. I would love this. I mean, and to be clear, I'm not of the mindset that, Cowboys bring in Anthony Barr, boom, roster is amazing all of a sudden. But these are the types of moves that, for the people who have been saying the Cowboys aren't doing the right things or the proper things, these are the types of things that I think we would like to see. You can shore up places where you have questionable depth right now. And linebacker is one of those spots. And so I really think that it would behoove the Cowboys to bring in somebody of this variety. They certainly need depth at the linebacker position. It's one of the places where they maybe don't have that much depth. Again, Micah Parsons kind of hides that because he is so special. But linebacker could certainly use some help, which, by the way, brings up one last question. Let's see. Let's get the banner up here for you. Matt Waletzko, rookie offensive tackle, 5th-round pick, left practice on Thursday. This was early on, and to date, I've been monitoring this situation ever since practice ended here, just kind of checking out Twitter. There are no updates on this. But Matt Waletzko, Cowboys, again, rookie 5th-round draft pick, who is seemingly in contention for the swing tackle spot on this team, did leave the practice field. That is not great news, and it did seem minor. So there's no like the sky is falling energy here, but the same way we're talking about Barn, I know a lot of you are super pumped about Jabril Cox, but again, like, I don't know. I mentioned Michael Gehlken's appearance on one of our podcasts this week. Michael Gehlken brought up a great point that even before Jabril Cox got hurt, he was still really only playing on special teams. So you're asking him to come back and be healthy, and now also tasking him with different things relative to last year. But on the other side of the ball now, to talk about Matt Waletzko here, the Cowboys have seemingly decided that swing tackle is going to come down to one of Matt Waletzko or Josh Ball. So either last year's 4th-round pick, who basically didn't play, or one of this year's 5th-round picks, who is brand new at this. And that would be scary in and of itself, right? Like if you had this massive question mark hovering at the swing tackle position. Swing tackle is not a starter, but it is effectively a starter. It is an important position. It is a vital position when you have a franchise quarterback and you have goals and aspirations of competing and winning the Super Bowl and all sorts of things, obviously. But all of that becomes all the more heightened when you have a player like Tyron Smith, right? We all love Tyron Smith. We all know and acknowledge that he's one of the best tackles in the NFL, but when healthy, right? Like you have to add that caveat. And it sucks. I mean, believe me, I don't want to have to add that caveat. I want to sit here and brag and say, yeah, the left tackle for my team is the very best in the NFL, because when he's playing, he is arguably the very best left tackle in the NFL. All due respect to to Trent Williams. But Tyron Smith, the overwhelming likelihood is that he is probably going to miss some time this coming season. And here we are on day 2, and one of your competing options for the swing tackle spot is now already a little bit hurt. And again, it might be nothing, right? The James Washington situation was nothing. Zeke ran off the practice field and came back very quickly on Thursday. So this might be nothing. But if this serves anything for the Cowboys, it should hopefully wake them up and say, you know what, we need depth. There are 3 positions right now. Let's see here. I saw this question. Lord King 83 says, D Ford was cut by San Francisco. Would you bring him in for a camp body? I don't think you have to do that here. I think that there are 3 spots, if you're interested, that really could use some depth. We all have some issues or some qualms with this roster. Maybe not all of us, but a lot of us do. And the 3 main spots, if you're trying to highlight the most important positions to address, are wide receiver, offensive tackle, and linebacker. If you can add some depth to those spots, we feel better, right? You raise the floor, because right now those are some really shallow spots for you. And if everything goes right, if nobody gets hurt, if everybody stays healthy, if everybody does what they're supposed to do, then yeah, you don't need anybody, right? If Tyron Smith stays healthy all season long, then who cares who your swing tackle is? But you have to prepare for that. You have to hedge your bet, and those are the bets that I think could really use some hedging. Is at the swing tackle position, obviously, is at linebacker. That's where Anthony Barr comes in, and it's at wide receiver. And all due respect to the acquisition of a punt returner in Kevontae Turpin, that's not the true classic, addition of a wide receiver that we're talking about here. Corey Cooper says not only linebacker depth, but we do need that veteran wide receiver. I'm disappointed we haven't got yet a championship roster. Got a good sprinkle of veterans that we don't have right now. Johnny Boy RN, our great friend, says that's too much pie, according to Steven. I know it's easy to poke and prod and kind of take shots at the Cowboys front office, and they sort of bring that on themselves. And I'm, a lot of people say like, oh, well then you run an NFL team. I'm not saying that running an NFL team is easy, but if running an NFL team were my job or your job or our job together, I'm assuming that we would throw all of our energy into making our job a successful one. And so these things feel like easy places to identify obvious solutions at. And when you have situations like what we've seen so far in training camp, right? And again, it's 2 days. It's 2 very light, minimal days, that in no way should be overreacted to. And I said this in Wednesday's show. I think that there's a lot of positives. I think the positive is that now we're only talking about football. We had to talk about so many awful things that encircled and enthralled this franchise all off season long. So I credit Mike McCarthy for getting the football of it all back to the priority. And some of that is just now arriving to training camp. But if we look at the injury scares, if we call them that the Cowboys have had so far throughout camp, wide receiver is one of them with James Washington, and Offensive tackle's another one with Matt Waletzko. And so even if those things hadn't happened, you can already argue that those are the top 2 positions of need for the Cowboys to go address. So go do it. You have $20 million in salary cap space. There are veterans out there who can help you right now. We can sit here and we can name them, but the reality is you need them. You are going to need them. And maybe the Cowboys are waiting. That's what a lot of people say. Maybe they're waiting until the middle of camp. They've done that before. Just last year, they brought in Malik Hooker during training camp. Maybe they're planning on doing that with Anthony Barr, or I don't know, who pick your wide receiver du jour, Will Fuller, T.Y. Hilton, obviously not Julio Jones now. The tackle depth as far as free agents is not quite the same. Maybe it's Odell Beckham at wide receiver, whatever. But you have the flexibility. That's what you did. You earned that flexibility with all the decisions that you made over the last few months. Use it. Use the get out of jail free card, which is what you have right now. Let's see here. Money out. We're not going to read that name here. It's family show, but I would put O-line and wide receiver as 1 and 1A as far as concerns go, and linebacker is a little bit of a distant third to the first 2. I agree. Getting you off the screen because, again, family show, you have every right to make your username what you want. That was close. I got to be on my toes here. That was very, very close moment. Marky Mark says, I'm having pork chops for dinner. What's the situation here, Mark? Are we air frying them? Are they breaded and battered? Like, I've got to know how your pork chops, if you're going to do it, I mean, make it a breakfast pork chop as far as I'm concerned. Go pork chops, eggs, some potatoes, bacon, maybe some sausage. That's what I would like to see you have for dinner. Kevin Myers says, definitely need to rebuild the offensive line, start drafting number 1s along that line. They did that. They drafted Tyler Smith. They're seemingly aware that they have to do that. Lord King 83 with a rare pro-Steven opinion here. I don't normally agree, but Steven was right. We got some good, young, stud-hungry players that want to shine, and they won't get anywhere behind the curtain all the time. See, I could kind of agree with this, Lord King 83, but you can have both, right? You can have the young players that you want and the veterans to raise your floor. Not every veteran comes in and is a progress stopper. You acquire them on your roster, and then you play the best players, but you raise the floor. You give yourself outs. You hedge the bets like we were talking about a moment ago. Johnny Boy RN says, I'm surprised Fuller hasn't been a bigger story for the Cowboys. Obviously, a lot of people have contended that Will Fuller wants to go to Cleveland to reunite with Deshaun Watson. Who knows? But he would be an awesome addition on the Dallas Cowboys. There's no doubt about that. Kevin Myers, by the way, back on the pork chop front, says smothered or fried is the only way. I think Thursday was a productive day for the Dallas Cowboys, and I think if we've learned anything so far, it's that the defense appears to be in line for a successful season. And again, all of this carries the context of 2 very light practices. So we don't need to jump to any conclusions. We don't need to say anything that is absolute. But right now, the defense looks great. Micah Parsons looks great. Anthony Brown looks great. Trayvon Diggs looks great. All those things are really promising and exciting with regards to this season and all the hopes and dreams that we have for this team. Offensively, Dak Prescott looks like he's in incredible shape. Mike McCarthy had a line, by the way, that I think people misinterpreted by Red Supremes. So sorry if I missed it, but did we talk about Turpin? We did talk about Kevontae Turpin. You can go back, obviously rewatch. The gist is great return option. Probably not a real receiver for the Cowboys. Extremely questionable background. But Mike McCarthy, this is a great note to end on, I think. Talking about Dak Prescott, I thought, had a really great quote that a lot of people took a little bit too literally. He said, defense wins championships, but the Super Bowl is won by the quarterback. And a lot of people are like, isn't the Super Bowl the championship, whatever. I love this quote. And Mike McCarthy talked on Thursday before practice started about how this is Dak Prescott's team. This is Dak Prescott's offense. And you can kind of start to see and feel his imprints and fingerprints all over it. Obviously, there was the story about him being somewhat involved in the draft process of Jalen Tolbert as an example. And this is the one thing the Cowboys are doing that I am soaking wet in agreement on, like in the pool. Like I'm completely submerged in agreement here because, it should be your quarterback's team. You should do something I used to say a long time ago after Dak Prescott's rookie year. Mark Sanchez was his primary backup in 2016. If you'll recall, I know Tony Romo was there. And a point I had that entire offseason because much was said and much was written about Dak's relationship with Mark Sanchez. And my point that year, this was now 5 years ago, was if Dak likes Mark Sanchez, then Mark Sanchez needs to be here, right? Like if Dak likes Powerade over Gatorade, then Powerade needs to be here. If Dak likes, whatever, it has to be that. You have to completely and totally model and build your football team to be to the comfort level of your franchise quarterback. That's the whole point, right? Like you cannot do this without the most important position and player in the game, and that's who Dak Prescott is for this team. And so I love that, and I love Mike McCarthy understanding that and having that idea. And I love that he's giving credit to the defense and saying, look, this defense can carry us, but in the ultimate degree of it all, it's won by the quarterback. You have to have that component. You can have a great defense that can win you a championship, but the quarterback is the final factor, the it factor, the ultimate factor. And so I feel really good about where the Cowboys are as far as the materials and the ingredients that they're working with. I would like to see some things added to that. But maybe the third training camp practice gives us some more information to kind of digest and react to in that sense as well. Whatever happens throughout the third training camp practice, we will, of course, be here. We are here. This is new. If you are not subscribed here to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel, please do so. That would make us oh so happy. We will now have daily live stream videos for you every single weekday, talking about, reacting to, discussing, analyzing, assessing, maybe even debating the Dallas Cowboys with you. If you don't catch the shows live, you can always catch the rewatches. We also have other videos and other live shows for you here, including post-game reactions and things like that here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. We're very excited to share this season with you. So again, please do subscribe. If you're in the mood to subscribe to stuff, head on over to the Blog on the Boys podcast network, wherever you get your podcasts. Sometimes you're on the go, whether you're driving, you're working out, whatever, you need to listen to something. We have 2 different shows that come out every single day, in addition to a daily update of sorts just like this. We're available on all major podcast platforms. My name is RJ Ochoa. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. TikTok at rj.ochoa. Maybe you're feeling old school, you want to send me an email, you can, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com. You can always leave a comment down below, and we'll get to those as well. For now, though, that's it for Thursday, July 28th, 2022. We'll see you on Friday, July 29th, 2022. That's the way that time and calendars work. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next time.